Hi Sakshi,
Hi, ma'am.
please introduce yourself.
My name is Sakshi Ajmera. I have done my bachelor's in law from National Law Institute University, Bhopal, and I graduated in the year 2022. I got a campus placement to Trilegal, which is a law firm, and I worked there for 1 year and 4 months with the banking team in the Mumbai office. Thereafter, I quit my job to start preparing for government competitive examinations.
Why did you leave the job? Just to prepare for government jobs?
Yes, ma'am, because I thought that right now is the time where I can take a switch from the private sector to the government sector because I wanted to become a legal officer. And if I take that switch later on, then it won't be possible for me to take that switch later on.
How old are you?
I am 26 years old.
But it's still possible. We still have. What motivated you to switch the job? Why this particular post?
This particular post is with respect to insurance sector, and I was working in the banking industry. That is also an interesting job. But however, I realized that with time, the insurance sector is also gaining traction. And with the government policies for insurance for all, this particular sector has a lot of potential. And if I currently take a switch towards this sector and towards being a law officer, because I wanted to work under the legal sector itself. And there aren't many companies which offer as a insurance sector jobs. So that's why I decided to appear for these examinations and give these exams.
How many judicial services examination have you appeared in?
I have only appeared in the Rajasthan Judicial Services, which happened last year.
Are you still planning, if you get the job, to prepare for judicial services?
Ma'am, right now, because of the current scenario where the Supreme Court is currently deciding on the eligibility criteria, I don't think I will be able to prepare.
What if the
for it in
decision
future.
comes in your favor and you're eligible then?
No, I will not, because if I get into a legal officer position, I think that will be more enticing for me rather than a judiciary.
Why?
For one of the reasons is that you get to stay in a metro city if you are in a company, and otherwise then as a judicial officer there are constant shifting and transfers. So that is the major factor basis which I decided to take up the PSU sector and not go for judicial examinations.
Transfers are always going to happen in being a law officer also. So you're not willing to take transfers?
No, that is not the real thing. I'm willing to take transfers, but the thing is that in a judicial officer, the transfers are in small towns, and but if you have a PSU sector, then generally it's in tier 2 cities, which I will like over the other places to stay at.
Okay.
So you have a bias against small towns?
Not particularly, but if given a chance to work in tier 2 cities or tier 1 cities, I will prefer that.
What I think is that you were preparing for judiciary, but because of this eligibility rule, you had no option than to appear in government law officer exam. There's no particular liking about insurance sector.
That's not particularly the thing, because I'd also appeared for OICL and I'd
Because you had to, na?
Did you appear for any government law officer exam before you appeared for the judicial services exam?
No, because right before I quit the Rajasthan Judicial Services, I quit my job and then only the notification for the judicial exam came. So I had no other option but to appear for it. And after that, like in 2024, I started giving the legal officer exams.
Did the eligibility decision came before 2024 or after 2024?
With respect to the MP eligibility, I was eligible under the scenario that is either a 70% or a 3-year practice. So I was eligible under that rule. And but yes, I was also trying to give other legal officer exams as well.
Sakshi, tell me one thing. You said you do not want a transferable job. You prefer metros over small towns, right? Am I right?
That's right.
Trilegal was giving you exactly that. A metro city and a non-transferable job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ma'am, the reason is that was a private sector job. Like since
But a very
childhood,
well-paying job.
That's right, ma'am.
And
But
stability was also there.
Right, but the thing is that since childhood itself, and while I was preparing for CLAT also, there was certain part of me that wanted to work in the government sector. So
Hmm.
that is the reason why I
What makes the
decided.
government sector enticing?
One is the stability that comes with the job
वो
because
तो private sector में भी है. Private sector also offers you stability if you're good at your work, right?
yes, that's correct. But still, like in terms of the work-life balance, also, I think the government sector jobs are very nice when compared to a private sector job. That's the major factor.
Okay, let's test your knowledge about insurance since you are very fond of it. So, can you explain me different kinds of insurance?
Yes, there are majorly two kinds of insurance. One is a life insurance, and the second is a general insurance. Within general insurance, we have fire insurance, marine insurance, and miscellaneous insurance. So, life insurance has different plans where either on the death of the person, the policy is given, the amount is given, or on achieving a particular age, that particular amount is given. In general insurance, we have fire insurance to save you from risks of fire. In marine insurance, we have the for transportation and other carriage purposes, whatever risks are there, those are insured.
I'll stop you there. Can you explain me different kind of marine insurance, especially with relate to trade?
Sorry, I don't know this, but I'll read upon this.
ठीक है. मुझे बताओ, why was Insurance Regulatory Development Authority established?
The Insurance Regulatory Development Authority was established in 1999, and it's a statutory body. So it was established to regulate, grow the insurance sector because there were a lot of insurance policies that were being taken, and there were insurance companies also, but there weren't any set of regulations to control the policy holders or the insurance companies, and that was the reason why that Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India was established.
ठीक है. And किस कमेटी की रिपोर्ट से?
R.N. Malhotra Committee report established the IRDAI.
Okay, so with related to IRDAI, I have a question. So IRDAI also have the authority to provide license, right?
Yes.
But this license of insurers can also be revoked.
Yes.
Can you just brief me about the grounds on which the license can be revoked?
The license can be revoked if for example, if this is a company which was set up for life insurance and it starts doing another business or particularly separate from a insurance business, then that license can be revoked. Then there are certain grounds on which, if, for example, let's say the policy holder has to take certain amount of insurance policy. In fact, for reinsurer also, if you're supposed to take a particular amount of insurance policy to the reinsurer and you fail to do that, then your license can be cancelled.
So you mentioned about reinsurance. What do you call that agreement or, for example, contract when an insurer goes for reinsurance?
It is to the best of my knowledge, it's called a reinsurance contract, wherein the insurer enters into a reinsurance contract with the reinsurer to it is another like the reinsurer is another insurer which provides which takes the risk of a particular insurer. So that insurer company is called a cedant, and that ceding company offers that insurance to a reinsurer to divide its risk basically.
Can you name few of the reinsurers in India?
Yes. So, the General Insurance Corporation of India has a monopoly when it comes to a government insurance company. However, a few weeks back, Value Ethics is a reinsurer company which has been which is the only private reinsurance company which has been given a license by the IRDAI. So, till now it was the GIC had a monopoly, but now the IRDAI has started giving license to private insurers. Irrespective of that, a particular amount of insurance has to be reinsured with the GIC.
Can you tell me why this authority was given to IRDAI? Because GIC was giving a wonderful work. So what was the need of it?
Sorry, I failed to understand
What was the need of giving this authority to IRDAI if GIC was doing it perfectly? What was the purpose of giving this authority to Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India?
Okay. From what I understand of the question, I think in 1972, the GIB was given the power of taking care of the insurance business and general insurance in particular. However, basis the R.N. Malhotra committee that said that there also has to be a statutory authority which checks for these insurance companies. For example, we also have SEBI for securities, right? So that way, insurance also needs to have an authority, and that was the basic reason why IRDI came into became a statutory body, and then GIC's area of business was reinsurance. Particularly, the act was also amended in that respect.
Can you tell me the types of reinsurance?
Yes. So there are majorly two types of reinsurance. One is facultative reinsurance and the other is treaty reinsurance. A facultative reinsurance is one when you can reinsure individual risks. So for each individual risk, you will enter into an individual contract. And but there are a little limitations to this, is that administratively it's more expensive and a lot of contracts need to be entered into. The other is treaty reinsurance, wherein for similar kinds of risks, you can enter into one contract, and that is the reinsurance contract. Under treaty reinsurance, there are two demarcations. One is the proportional reinsurance and the other is the non-proportional reinsurance. In a proportional reinsurance, as long as, for example, there's amount of 60 crores which is to be given, then you will, in proportion, the insurance company and the reinsurer company is going to give that amount. However, in non-proportional, what generally happens is, to a particular limit, the insurance company is only going to bear the risk. And after that limit, the reinsurer comes into the picture and they will reinsure it.
Tell me, what is the right of first refusal?
Ma'am, right of first refusal means that, for example, if you are going to sell your shares or a particular amount of your stocks, then you first, for example, if a third party is offering you a particular price, then you first offer that particular share to your existing shareholders. If the existing shareholders are able to match that price, then you offer it to the shareholders itself, so that their say in the company does not decrease, like their shares in the company do not decrease.
Constitution में insurance कहाँ आता है? In under which list?
Ma'am, I think it's in the concurrent list, but I'm not very sure on this particular.
Can you tell me a little bit about the principle of subrogation in insurance?
Yes. So, from what I understand, under the Transfer of Property Act, it's under Section 92, that is subrogation. If there's a mortgager and a mortgagee, and if, let's say, a third party wants to enter into the shoes of a mortgagee, it can repay that particular amount of loan and enter into the shoes of those mortgagee. So whatever rights that existing mortgagee had, those are transferred to the party which repays a particular amount of debt. And that principle is called the subrogation.
Okay. Can you differentiate it with the principle of conjugation?
Sorry, ma'am, I will read up on this. I don't know.
Oh, sure.
ठीक है, मुझे ये बताओ. Let's say I'm a policy holder and my rights are violated. How can I approach the Supreme Court? Can I approach the Supreme Court? Where can I go if my rights are violated?
Ma'am, there's a securities appellate tribunal where you can approach, and that particular the SAT, that is called, from that an appeal lies to the NCLAT. And after that NCLAT, you can go to the High Court. However, going to the Supreme Court is not something that you will have at the present moment when a particular policy is not being fulfilled.
Okay. And let's say the government launched a new regulation for insurance and it is violating my right. How can I, where can I go? What can I do?
Can I take a minute?
Sure. Okay. Given that you can approach SAT to NCLT and NCLT to IPA.
Ma'am, from what I understand, if we have to take the route of approaching the Supreme Court, there has to be a violation of your fundamental right. And if that particular regulation is in any way violating Article 19, that is your freedom of speech and expression and right to trade, to carry on your business, then you can approach the Supreme Court under Article 32.
Can you tell me where exactly it has been mentioned that you have to approach Security Appellate Tribunal and then NCLT and then High Court?
Ma'am, I read it under Section 61A of the Insurance Act, where any appeal from the Securities Appellate Tribunal has to go to the NCLAT.
So, appeal from SAT, right?
Yes.
So, who's the first authority who passes the order and then you go to SAT for the appeal? Which section again?
61B,
61B of?
Insurance Act.
ठीक है. मुझे ये बताओ कि वक्फ अमेंडमेंट बिल पे क्या ओपिनियन है तुम्हारा?
Ma'am, this is a very sensitive topic, so I will just highlight on what the amendments are brought about. So, firstly is the name change. So, it was initially called Waqf Act of the 1923. Now, it has been renamed as Ummeed, a Unified Waqf Empowerment and Development Act. And the basic idea of the government for bringing this change is to not to give it like a growth perspective. Secondly is Waqf by user. This concept has been removed, wherein whenever a Muslim used to have a land and was residing in it for a religious purpose for a long period of time, he used to take that particular land, and then nobody could change that particular status of that land. That has been removed. So only if for the last 5 years you've been on that land, only then that will be provided. This is a second major change. The third major change is that initially there was only the Waqf board, and anything that the Waqf board decides, that is going to be final. No appeal could be preferred to the High Court or to any other court. However, right now with the Waqf Amendment Act, you can approach the High Court if the Waqf is not in your favor. And the last major change is that Waqf board now has two non-Muslim members, and that's mandatory to have those non-Muslim members. In my opinion, this is something that is a step in a good direction, because not all religions have this particular kind of law. And one is that it is good that a particular Waqf Act is there in place, but there also has to be like the government also needs to see if that's not getting violated, or an extreme violation does not happen.
What is the purpose of having two non-Muslim members in the board? Waqf is a religious establishment, right?
Yes.
Then why to include two?
In my opinion, I think that is in the best interest of other people also. For example, anything that the Waqf decide used to be like the main thing that on the basis of which everything will be decided. But just to ensure that other people's a little bit say, and it's just 2 members out of those 12 members. So a little bit say of what the society at large would think is also required when it comes to a statutory body.
What exactly Waqf is, according to you? What is Waqf?
Waqf as a term means that it's in respect of property, from what I understand. And if that particular land, for example, a piece of land that the Waqf board decides is...
Again, what is Waqf?
It is an Urdu term, and I don't
What
know
does it
exactly.
How can you have an opinion if you don't understand the first term?
Um,
It's thank you.
Which one?